Hello, and welcome to Megan's Mystical Mashup, a conversation about life, the universe, and anything in between. My name is Megan Rounds, and welcome to the show. I'm so happy to see you here. Today's guest is a former commercial pilot who has transitioned to a professional intuitive reader, spiritual teacher and coach, animal communicator, and channel. She lives life with her sweetheart Brian and their pampered pups, Ruffy and Presley, in Oahu, Hawaii. In her precious free time, she likes to train dogs and learn new things such as photography, violin, other musical instruments, and explore metaphysical tools such as crystal bowls and oracle cards. She's been a member of the Lightworkers Lab for about a year, and you can find her here in the main lab where she hosts Living in Joy every Thursday at 8 p.m. Central Time. This is her second appearance on the show and holds the esteemed position as first guest in my first show in the lab. I did a little practice in the light room before coming into the main lab, but this was my first guest for the main lab first show. So, woohoo! Nobody else ever gets to have that title. I'll include the link to the replay of our first conversation if you're interested in the show notes, again, which will be posted about an hour or two after the show today. Please give a warm Lightworkers welcome to Lisa Robinett. Anyway, hi Lisa, welcome to the show.
Hi, aloha. Thanks for having me.
You
It's so
too.
good to see you.
I'm going to post your stuff
You,
here. There.
it's always good to see you. And I have to say, you look gorgeous. I love that color, and I think it's a scarf on you. That
Thank
is your
you.
color. I love it.
You know, for a long time, I rejected the color pink. I had this time in high school where I was in a car with some friends. There were like 5 of us in this car. The window was open about this much, and bird poop went through the window. I'm in the middle of the people in the car, and it hit me, right? And that same day, or right around, I was wearing this one particular outfit that had a lot of pink. And then I also had fallen down and skinned my knee wearing the same outfit. And I just decided, not that it was the outfit, but it was the color. And I'm like, I'm done with pink. And then I had, when we were about to receive our child into our family, our daughter, it's like, I'd better get used to the color pink. I better come to terms with it. And so I did, and then it's like, hello, pink. And then I just only wore pink for a while. And now, I wear other colors too. But thank you for saying that.
Yeah, pink gets a bad rap. I used to be very color averse as
Yes,
well, and now
me
I'm
too.
like color.
Yep. Now my daughter is in the blacks and grays stage, but she used to wear every color in all of her outfits. She'd wear polka dots and stripes and zigzags all in one outfit, and she's like one of the few people I've ever seen who can get away with that. And then she's in the dark mode, but she's preteen, and I kind of think that's a normal right. But and she's starting to explore with color again. So.
Yeah. Yes. Cool. Yeah, it's funny because I'm wearing black today. I hardly ever resonate with black, but I sort of pick since my spiritual awakening, I kind of pick my shirts and clothes on like resonance with the color for the day.
Well, and that's where pink, the reason I chose pink today in part is because for Minnesota, this is a beautiful spring day. And what that means is that we will we've been above freezing, but we're actually on the rise to getting into the 40s and 50s Fahrenheit, which is, nice and welcome because we've been hit pretty hard with snow and then rain and now flooding, but it's going to be warmer feeling. So,
oh my gosh.
And I know that's relative. I mean, I know you're in Hawaii. It's like, man, that's freezing.
Yeah. We literally on our news, we got down into, our news, we got down to the 50s this winter for our low, and everybody is like, on the news, they're like, oh my goodness, it's really freezing out there. It's in the 50s. We're like, we understand if you're on the mainland, that doesn't sound cold to you, but to us, it's really, really cold. So I have sweaters. I have an electric throw blanket that I was sitting on the couch with. Like
I hear you. Yeah. There are times when I wish that I were back in an environment where that felt cold. It's like, I like the seasons.
Yeah.
I enjoy being here most of the time, but mosquitoes in summer and then just the cold. I don't care about the snow, but the cold is just, I get tired of it. I think I'm going to, it is
so
for
fun and beautiful,
I don't know, a day or two.
Yep. Until you have to go to work in it.
driving around here, and I know there's a couple of other Minnesotans in the lab, and it's like driving around here is just ridiculous. All we need is 1 inch of snow, and it creates like a 3-hour commute for someone who normally would have less than, like a half an hour. It's just, yeah.
Yeah. My philosophy about winter is it should be a vacation destination.
I hear you.
Not
yes,
a season.
I'm there with you. So we've been texting back and forth or messaging back and forth about what we might talk about, this being your second time here. And I really just want to open it up to you to talk about whatever you'd like to talk about. What things have happened since, a year ago.
Well, I would love to. I want to catch you up on what's been happening, but before that, I'd like to
sure,
respond to your stories, if that's okay. Yeah. First of all, I love the idea of good news. I stopped watching the news, anything except for local news, a few years ago, because locals here in Hawaii is a little more positive based. And then about a year-ish ago, year and a half ago, I stopped watching any news. So I was like, if something's important enough, somebody will tell me. And lo and behold, like my hairdresser will tell me this, or somebody will tell me that, or maybe, you see it on the internet or something. So I love good news, though, that you incorporated that in your show, and then there's a channel that's that. And the Robin Hood story I really loved that it brings out the compassion and honesty in people. It also brought out people's doubts, but at the same time, their honesty. So it really shows how situations bring out that which needs to be brought out in us. And I love that. Although I wish I could be Robin Hood. Like, that would be such a dream of mine, to just be able to anonymously gift things to people and be able to watch them. And I would love that. It just sounds so cool. I love that somebody's doing that. And then the scruffy, oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to go watch that video.
It's really, really short, but it's fun.
Although, yeah, my Ruffy, he's really, really trained. He loves training. I love training. He's super smart, picks up things like that. But I can tell you who would not jump rope, because he gets shy about environmental things. A rope coming at him, he'd be like, "What the heck?"
I would like to see the trainer actually train those dogs to do both turning the rope and the jumping. We have 2 dogs, and they're trainable, but we're not particularly the best trainers, especially because there's 2 of us and we're not consistent in our training. And that's all I'm going to say about that. But
that's huge. That's huge.
Yeah. And so I'm going to show it to my husband so he can watch this and say, see what's possible when you work together, but, yeah. So that first story, do you know that where I found the abstract connection to you? It's really lame in a way.
No.
Robinett. Robin.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
I didn't even think of
it popped into my head after I'd already printed it. And I'm like, oh, yeah, huh, okay. So I figure it was a spiritual thing that said, hey, this will be funny.
I love that. Someday, I'm manifesting that I will be able to do that. Yeah, and then my thoughts about the early riser, late riser stories. I think maybe an early riser wrote that. I mean, I know it was a study, but also I think everybody's individual. I always talk about that. Like, we need to hold our own voice as our highest voice of truth. And everybody comes down here uniquely individual. Doctors sometimes have a hard time understanding that. Our bodies are individual, our needs are individual. And I think our society is moving towards recognizing that. But even studies like this, if you look into quantum physics, there's the observer effect. That which you're expecting is what you get, to the point that when they're studying light, if they're expecting it to be a particle, they get particle behavior. If they're expecting it to be a wave, they get wave behavior. So that maybe this researcher was an early riser and is expecting these things out of the study. I don't know, but I actually am one of those. I switch. I think I'm like go to bed at 11, wake up at 7 a lot of times, but sometimes I'll go through a few months where I'm really early riser. Sometimes I'll go through a few months where I'm later. And my father had a philosophy that we are really on the 25-hour cycle as humans. I don't know exactly why. So we'd always kind of go a little later, a little later, a little later. That's how his body worked anyway. And he had a PhD in physics.
Cool is that? Oh, man. Well, I love that idea, because I do have, I have my own cycle, but I haven't necessarily been able to identify it yet because of external conditions that require my presence at times that I'd rather not have to have it.
Right.
There
Yeah.
was one of my earlier jobs had they had this, I worked for a transportation company and we hired bus operators and they had to have physicals, and then they had a medical group that would get together to discuss the patterns that they saw in the physical challenges that bus operators faced. And I was required to be the scribe basically for that at 7 in the morning. So, which meant I had to leave at 6, which meant I had to get up at 5. Ish, and I cut it close as much as possible. But the fact that they're talking about medical conditions using these are medical like teams that to try to describe that. I mean, it was great training for when I was in the Navy and had to repeat back words that I didn't always understand about our engine room. But at least most of the time when I had to do that, that was during the regular day, not some kind of, I mean, in the winter, trying to do that was just ridiculous. I'm like, could you repeat that, please? Could you write that down for me?
Yeah.
But anyway, I love that idea.
Well, and I know too. Yeah, I know too that they've done studies on pilots that, and I've had to work many night shifts, swing shifts, 1 hour, 1 week you're on nights, the next week you're on mornings, things like that. And they've done studies on pilots on how it adds to illness, they age quicker, things like that. And I mean, so I would think the same applies as wherever your envelope is if you're outside of that. So I think
I do too. I dream of a day when we do have that flexibility in our lives to honor our individual, time cycles. I think it's really important, and there are cultures in the past who have really recognized those different cyclical elements and I think incorporated them into their lives. Of course, the kind of lives we have today are very different than the lives they had then, when maybe it was easier, but still, if we can create robots and artificial intelligence, then why can't we create a lifestyle where we can honor our individuality more?
Yeah, I agree. And I feel like I'm seeing society have patterns that's moving towards that. So
I do too.
Good about that.
Buying time, right?
Yeah. And then the only quick thing I want to say about your last story is, like, yes, I'm like you, have always been a very future liver until my spiritual awakening, which really helped me to be more present. Meditation, channeling helps me to be more present. And with that, some of the things I'll tell you about what I've been learning about and things, but one of my main teachers has been channeling. It's really beautiful. And when that information comes through you, it's almost like you don't have to learn it the same way as when you're reading a book. It's sort of easier to integrate it. But one of the things that comes through a lot is what you were talking about, is the journey is the destination. Like we keep thinking we're on the journey to get to the destination, but the journey is the destination. That now moment is the only thing ever in front of us. And so often we forget that is the destination.
I have to say, I don't think I forgot as much as had to learn that in the first place, because so much conditioning throughout my life was the goal. And, that there's always this destination.
Yes. Yes. Same here. That's society.
And that,
I think that's totally the way our society is.
And so when I graduated with my doctorate, that's when it really started to hit me, because I got to this point where I was like, okay, I did this. Now what? And there really wasn't support in that program for the now what. And me, as well as a number of my cohort colleagues, because we did this as a group, kind of floundered, because we're like, okay, now what? Because we didn't really get that whole journey part. And so a big part of my journey after that has been to recognize that it is about the journey, which is easy to forget still.
Yeah, well, same here. I struggled with that too, and I would say the biggest thing is getting that information via channeling, because it's learning it in a different way, so it's integrated it a little more deeply in me. But I still forget.
I love that you said that about channeling as learning in a different way. I would agree, and it reminds me of a mashup. I don't remember who it was with. Maybe Erica. That we talked. No, it was somebody else, and it was about how I notice now I listen in a different way too. And maybe, I don't know if do you find that too? When I'm listening, it's almost like I'm listening to a big picture instead of every individual word, which I used to hang on individual words. I pick up individual words, but now it's almost like I'm looking at a portrait or a picture, and little things stand out, but they're not all detail as detailed as it used to be. I don't know how to explain it.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't know that I have that experience, except for that I think maybe I'm a very, very intense listener. I mean, I meaning that I really, when I'm listening to somebody, I am giving them my full attention, which I had to learn that maybe
Yeah.
not everybody listens in that way. So I think I do both. Like I'll see patterns and big picture, but also pay attention to every single word. But that, I think that's just kind of how I
Well,
came
and
into this
no,
world. So that didn't change for me, but it sounds
well,
similar
now
to what
that
you're
you say
talking
that, it's
about,
like
maybe.
when I'm talking with somebody like coaching and things like that, I am listening fully to everything, you know, I'm I want to be fully
Hmm.
present. And then there are some things where, like if I'm listening to a speech and I'm not completely invested in, maybe even sometimes I am invested in it, but it's like I'm listening, I'm noticing that I listen differently. And I can still articulate and repeat back things that I've heard, but I don't know. It's just an interesting phenomenon I've been really paying attention to lately.
I think that can apply to me a little bit. Like the more I channel, the more I'm in that, um,
Mm.
less of the left brain state and more of the right brain. And I have noticed through repeated channeling that I live my life a little bit more from that right brain state where you're just kind of more in the flow all the time and less worried about like you and I are both detail oriented people. And while I might hear this, it's like I let go of that more. So I think
Yeah.
that's probably a similar
That is
experience.
super
Yeah.
interesting. I'm going to have to explore that further because now that's like a nugget, you know, that's like,
Yeah. Yeah. I've definitely noticed. I live a little differently for
and
sure, I think.
how? I mean,
But
besides the listening, yeah,
how do I live
if you're
differently?
comfortable talking about it, of course.
Oh, just more. Yeah, yeah, of course. I mean, of course, my habits. I think last time we talked, I think I was still in intuitive intensive last year. Maybe it was around the time frame. But so of
Mm.
course I picked up habits from that I'm carrying forward.
I'm
Was it
trying, it
after?
was, I don't remember
I
exactly
can't
either.
remember
So I'm
exactly.
thinking might have been at the tail end,
Yeah,
maybe at the
somewhere
tail
right
end,
at the end
but
of
both
it.
of us may have been slightly
Yeah,
behind
I
in
think that
terms
was
of the content. I don't know if you were behind, I was.
probably. I think I kept that pretty well. It was intense.
It's a
It is intensive. It's a great
That name
experience, but yeah,
definitely
intensive.
is accurate. Yeah, are you doing it again this year?
Yes. Yeah. Trisha and Crystal.
Good.
Yes. Yeah. I'm going to follow along because for everyone, the intuitive intensive is
Yes.
starting next week. And it's amazing. It's a lot of information. I think I did keep up pretty well, but what I didn't do, you have a whole year to go through the information. And my life just exploded after that in a beautiful way, but I never had time to go back over it. So when she said that we could come in again, um, the last year's graduates could come in again and go over the content
Yeah.
again. I was like, yes, yes. So I'm going to try and keep up with it as they go
Good.
as much as
Well,
I
I'll see
can
you there. I'm
again.
doing it too.
But yeah, I will say, cool. I will say that since I incorporated, of course, more meditation, more in-depth meditation, I do readings for myself and incorporating crystals, all those things. But what I mean, so I live my life differently in that way with my habits have changed, but I think I mean a little more esoterically in that, and this grows every day, and then I let go of things more. I've surrendered more. I have definitely let go of worrying as much as I used to, which is a beautiful thing. And it feels like as I let go of one level of fear and worry, I've been dealing with root chakra stuff right now, then it will come up with another level down to, I feel like I'm at the basic root
Mm.
chakra fears of humans, not even my own personal ones. And then I go through them and then I get to a place where I can say, okay, maybe my safety is in jeopardy. Maybe my finances are in jeopardy. Maybe everything's in jeopardy. Where do I stand? And then still going within and finding joy within
Mm.
myself, no matter what's going on out here. And I don't hold it totally consistently yet, but way more than I ever could before. And it's becoming more and more consistent. It is such, to me, it's true freedom. If you can disconnect your inner state from what's out here, that to me is true freedom. I can still hold inner peace, even if somebody could look at my life and not think there'd be peace at all. And I can still hold joy if somebody could look at my life and not think there's joy. And that has been a beautiful beautiful gift that's evolved
Definitely.
over this
And
past year.
congratulations. We often seem to
Yeah.
travel similar paths in our life journey. And I can say the same thing is true for me. I think
Yeah.
I'm really noticing that
Oh.
something has completely transformed, but I'm not distant enough from it to know exactly what that was, other than I've incorporated so much
Hmm.
more um, metaphysical, spiritual elements into my life that those are now the forefront of my thinking instead of the afterthought, like, oh, maybe I could have done this, or it's like, okay, I have rituals and things that I do like before the show, but I do them every day. I'm incorporating it more into my work, and it's always the first thing I think about instead of towards the latter part in a reflective sense. I mean, I still do that, but it's more like,
Yeah.
how can I, instead of how did I, or how could I, if that makes sense. Kind of flying off the cuff there, but
Yeah, it makes complete sense to me. I think, no, it makes complete sense to me. And I feel the same way. And it's like, it used to be the norm to be, for better lack of terms, sort of in the egoic mind and coming from that state. And that was my norm. And occasionally I'd meditate and get to this really blissful place. And it feels like that's really morphine. I'm thinking maybe I'm in that other state going through life, maybe 50% or more, hopefully at this time. I'm sure it fluctuates, but it's like I'm slowly morphing to being less operating. The egoic mind's still there, might think thoughts, but I'm less operating from that as
yes,
things go on,
I'll
which makes
say
life so much
it's
easier
so
when
interesting
you
because
can.
there's so much fear around giving that up. I think for most people that it's so
Hmm.
closely attached to what we believe is our identity. Yet I find that the more I give that up and release
Yeah.
it, the happier I am, and I'm still me. I'm not as easily affected by things in the way that I used to be. That thing about taking things
Yeah.
personally, for example,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, that's a really welcomed change for me. I used to take everything personally, and now it's like, it's really not about me,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
And and so it's like that
Yeah.
personality thread
Exactly.
is still there, but the hooks are not really there in the same way or nearly as
Hmm.
frequent. And I always know when I am hooked or triggered by something that it means I've gone back to that place. And so it's always a learning.
Yeah. Yeah. I 1,000% agree with what you're saying, and would even add to that, at least for me, that not only do you not lose yourself when you're giving that up, I feel
Mm,
like I'm gaining more of myself. Of course, my personality, all the true parts of my personality are still here, and those parts of my personality that I really resonate with and serve my highest good get bigger in a way. And I feel like you're incorporating of your true self. You really are incorporating more of
yes.
your true self, and it doesn't feel like a giving up. It feels more like a coming home. It's not.
Yes.
It's That's the best way to explain it. It's not giving
Yep.
up anything. It's
And,
coming
an
home.
example um, that came to mind is, I mean, both of us are intuitive empath, um, you know, as a strength or a gift. And I mean, for me, it's been a great
Mhm.
unlearning of all of the things that I have taken on as being something I should be or should do. And a lot of those things I attach to my identity, which then, of course, is related to the egoic mind. And so, pride and,
Yeah.
needing to win or to achieve or to be a certain type of mom or a certain type of woman, and all of those things are things that we took on as being who we should be, and we felt it around the people, any judgment or any what's the any, let's say, guidance given by people as we're growing up. All of that stuff we've absorbed. I mean, all of us have absorbed it, but I think from an empath standpoint, we absorb it
Absolutely.
in a multidimensional way. And now it's like, okay, this is another social conditioning thing that I don't need to embrace. And it's really fun to notice all of these things.
Yeah.
And those have layers too. I'd written down the layer, like layers. You didn't actually say the word layers, I don't think, but I've been in a very onions have layers mode lately. So my friend So it's like all
Yeah.
of those layers and
Yeah.
peeling away at those, I think is just really fun. It used to kind of be harder, and now it's more enjoyable for me. It's like, oh, cool, another one, another thing that I don't need to own.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think I was even thinking that when you were talking about the last story about instead of going into distress, I forget the part of your story, but it was like my thought that came through about that was like, yes, instead of going into distress about worries and things like that, there's really in every single struggle, and if you're in the struggle, sometimes this is like, ugh, I don't want to hear it. But in every single struggle, there is a
Yes.
gift. There is a gift of a lesson, of a soul healing, of a soul expansion in every single struggle. Of course, we don't want to go into the struggles to have to learn them, but I seem to have to still go into some
Me
struggles
too.
to learn them. But if you're in that struggle, you don't need a struggle to expand your soul, of course. But if you're in that struggle, there does
Yep.
seem to be always a gift of something you can take out of
And
it
I,
and
I try
expand your
really hard to
soul.
find
So,
those things. And I think that, there's a
yeah.
saying, and I'm not going to even attempt to say it because I don't remember any of the real words, but the context is that life would be really boring if we didn't have those struggles, because if we were always living in our bliss without having some context of what it's like to be out of that, we wouldn't necessarily be able to appreciate it, and well, for me, that's true. Doesn't
Logically, I totally agree with that. But it's like, you know what? I'd like to
well,
try. Let's try that.
oh
Let me
yeah.
live in that
Well,
world.
and what
So
I
let me see
think
if I
is
get
that,
bored.
okay, I've had enough of that side, the challenges, the mountains to climb, all of that stuff, that I don't need it anymore. I'm fine living in my bliss for the rest of my life. And beyond, that's cool.
Yeah.
I got that experience. I'm sure that's what I came here for,
That's
and
where
I'm good.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I feel like I don't regret any of my experiences, hard, good, anything, but it's like, yeah, okay. I think I'm getting the hang of this.
Exactly.
Let's go on the bliss
Yes.
ride now.
Yes. Well, so oh, go ahead.
Well,
Yeah, no, I
should
was
I
just
get
going to
to
do the
what? Oh,
same
go
thing.
ahead. I was gonna
Okay, I
say,
should
should I
just
get to
hold
what
up a
I've been up
card.
to?
Segue.
Okay. Yeah, so I guess since intuitive intensive, that was a very life-changing experience. Anybody, I think it's still open for sign up. If any of you guys are on
Yeah,
the fence about it, oh my God,
it's very, very, very
go.
worth it.
It was really beautiful, life-changing. I think from there it rolled right into the spiritual, Crystal and Compton's
Hmm.
spiritual business program, which what she offered in that program and the price she offered it at, if you look around the internet,
Right.
there's no comparison. And that was so instrumental for me to go straight from really opening my gifts to wanting to go into business to really building my business throughout that program. It just like, it's like she held me by the hand and walked me through all the baby steps. So that was beautiful. And of course, getting my business up and running. Somewhere along that path, while I'm getting that up a little bit, when it was a little bit settled, then Trisha
Mm.
started her animal communication class, which was amazing. Of course, I signed up for that, went through it with her on the live. And now have added that to my professional services and I love doing that. It's so fun because it's like a treat. Like, if you love animals and you go play with the puppies, and you're like, yay, playing with puppies or cats or whatever. When you go into that communication state and you're actually communicating with them, you come out of it feeling like, yay, I just got to play with a puppy. It's that same feeling. So it's so much fun. And she has that going on Evergreen now. Like, you can go and sign up anytime you want. And then she has some of us, I'm now a moderator, teacher helper
Oh, good.
in that group now as it's ongoing. So the groups stay live and you can go sign up and go in there. So that's one thing I'm doing, and just so much fun. And then I just finished Matt Kahn's Angel Academy, Accessing the
Ooh,
Akashic
cool.
Records. And that was a really neat experience to go on live calls with him every week. I'm sure some of you in the Lightworkers Lab are familiar with Matt Kahn. He's just got of course, he's about the love revolution. He's got such a love-based energy, and I really resonate with his energy and his teachings. And sometimes I have to wrap my head around them for a little bit, but that was really fun. And he answered questions. I even got one of my questions when I had a really tough day. The next day was the day he answered my question and got to talk to him
Cool.
live, and so cool and so fun. That just ended like a week ago, right overlapping with, I know I'm into my crystal bowls. Everybody pretty much knows I'm into my crystal bowls. And I reached out to Ashana. I'm not sure if you're familiar with her, Ashana. From my research, she's like the top person in crystal bowls. She puts out CDs. I believe she was trained at Juilliard. If you can find her on YouTube, some of her videos. Her voice, I think that's how I found crystal bowls, is I found her video on YouTube one day, and she plays the alchemy ones. I'm not in that budget yet. I'm still at the crystal frosted ones, but when you play those, and then her voice, it feels like the angels are singing to you. That's the only way I can describe it. The energy of it's so beautiful. And she rarely offers mentorships. I reached out to her. It's been almost a year, and I just kept going. And she's like, well, maybe I'm doing this, I'm doing that. I'm like, okay, whenever I'm here. And it finally came up. So I started that mentorship. I've had 3 sessions out of the 8 so far. And it's just, I mean, you just think, oh, well, you just go like this for a crystal ball, but there's so much more to it. And she talks about building the relationship with the crystal ball and the energy that you're co-creating together. And it's just, I had an aha moment on this week's session where Brian came home. He hears me play them sometimes. He's like, wow, you can hear when I change my energy, you hear the difference in how the bowls play. And I had noticed that on my lives, because I take my F sharp one, the high heart chakra, and play it at the beginning of my live a lot. And I noticed as I started playing it on the lives, when I come and play it on the live now, it resonates more. It plays, it's like, yay, we're on the live, just how I feel when we're on the live. It sort of blossoms. It's really interesting to watch them change. When we think of them as inanimate objects, but most of us here in the lab know crystals are not really inanimate objects, and it's a crystal bowl made of quartz. So that has been amazing. And then the last one I'm really, really excited about is I think it's a month or so now that I started the path to getting my PhD in metaphysics. And yeah, so I'm doing that through even if you have bachelor's, you go through the bachelor's and master's, and then that would be through University of Metaphysics. And because of the specialty I chose, University of Sedona will be the
I'm in that too.
And yeah, I signed up for the group, and I thought I saw you in there. So I have been wanting to talk to you about that. And
oh my gosh,
where are you on the
Well, I'm still in the bachelor's piece. And what I found, something that's occurred to me is, despite the fact that I'm still in the bachelor's piece, where with that, it's this program, for those of you who aren't aware, is one where it's self-study, but it's robust. And so in the bachelor's program, you go through a number of different chapters and practices and things, and then they ask you questions. And although it's open book, they're not simple. You have to write to them.
I haven't gone to the questions.
Well, they're not
yet.
hard either. It's just that, it's a part of the learning process, is answering those questions. It's not as much like a test, right? And
okay. Yeah, it's more like getting your brain
and so I've
wrapped around
done
it.
a number of the they have in kind of like modules, and so I've done maybe 3 of the 4, I think, modules with a number of different chapters involved, and I've done them, but I haven't written the question or the responses out. So I've incorporated the activities and the affirmations that they have and things like that. It's the time commitment to writing those things out that I have had a challenge with. But at the same point, what I've noticed is I'm really honing in on, the things that I'm gravitating towards in my life and my interests relate to what I ultimately want to do I haven't really known what I've wanted to do with the master's thesis and the PhD aspects. I did the consciousness one, the personal consciousness one. I can't remember exactly what it's called now, but it's through the university. Yes.
Conscious-centered living?
Yes, I believe that's it. Is it really? Let's see how cool.
That's mine.
Oh, cool. We're going to have to talk about this again.
Yeah.
But the things that I'm gravitating towards are really creating a clearer vision of what I might want to do with that, the master's thesis and then the PhD work, which I didn't know when I signed up. So it's like, I'm following a path towards it.
Yeah.
So yes. But I am behind in my own timeline.
Yeah, and I think it unfolds just like life does.
Well, it's my own timeline.
You're right on your timeline.
Yeah, well, that's the whole thing. It's like, I want,
Yeah,
independent
your
study is
self-imposed
sometimes a
timeline.
challenge for me because other aspects, it's I think an exercise for me
Mm.
in taking of really setting priorities for what is most important to me. And I have a lot of priorities that are important to me. So then it's really getting granular on what are the most important and how do I incorporate all of those things into my life, if I believe that they're all that important, which the most important things are for me. It's like I have so many top priorities, they're all like on this
Yeah,
shelf, right?
I I live in a similar way, and I will tell you how I don't always do this because I don't always have the freedom to do this, but when I have a day that I have the freedom to choose what I want to do, I'm always almost more productive on
Mm.
those days. It's like, okay, I'm going to study metaphysics module now. I'm going to meditate here. I'm going to do this on Facebook here. And just when it sort of comes up and in the flow of it, if I can have that day to be in the flow of where I feel like putting my energy
Mm.
when, the day goes so much better. I mean, I don't have the freedom in my life to live my whole life like that,
Yeah.
but because I'm the same way. I have a lot of different priorities. So if they're all on my table and I take the pressure off of, oh, I got to do this, I got to do that. I think of it, I told someone the other day, think of it like a toy box. Like you don't ever get punished for not using all your toys. You just get the privilege of going and picking whichever one you feel like playing with right then. So that's how I think of all my interests and priorities and
I
stuff like
love
that.
that.
And
And
that's how,
so, just along as, oh, do you
but
want to say what you were going to say first, and then I'll say what I was just going to say. I
no,
did
no, go ahead.
this exercise. In fact, it was inspired by an oracle card. I'm looking at it in the background. It's like the shaman, excuse me, mystical shaman oracle. And Santa gave that to me for Christmas, and I started using it specific to work-related questions. And the one I pulled was medicine wheel, which then had an exercise of going through things that from my past that I'm still hanging on to, things that, toxic relationships, things that, where is my passion showing up, and what would I like to create in the future for my life? And it was like, you need to do this now. And so I'm like, okay, I did that. And I did that. And then I also did this. There was like a lot of aha moments from that exercise, which were life changing for me. So it's really well timed. But then I went through this exercise and took all of the different priorities that I have, things that have been in my head that I want to do, things that I feel obligated to do, like family obligations, work things, all of that other stuff. And I made little index cards for all of them.
Mm.
And then I realized why I'm always so overwhelmed, because I had a stack this big of all of these different things going through my head that I hadn't gotten out. But then also just to prioritize them, I'm like, this is really an interesting exercise. And it goes to your idea of being able to, having the privilege to choose what you want to do, and looking into that toy box and saying, today I'm going to do this. I have been really reluctant to add too much structure to my day, because I get too serious and almost so type A, where it's like, I have a whip, I'm like, nope, we only have 30 seconds for this conversation, and then
Yeah.
I have to go and do this thing, and it's like, I don't ever want to be that way anymore. It's not my favorite part of myself. It's like, there's a time for that sometimes, but it's like, I
Right.
don't want that.
Same here.
That's to me, I think
Same
that's
here.
operating
Yeah.
from fear. And I don't want to operate from fear. So I love your toy box idea, and looking at, I'm actually going to put those in a box, except that I do really want to pick and choose. It's like,
That's a
I do
great
want,
idea.
because the metaphysics, the PhD part has been something that I've been really interested and excited about for so long. And yet I seem to be putting it on the back burner more often than not. And I don't want to feel bad about that, but at the same point, it's like, well, why am I not making it a priority? And making it that I can choose to do this. It doesn't, nobody's hassling me about except me. So anyway, thank you for your awesome
Yeah.
approach.
Oh yeah, sure. And I mean, that we're very similar in that way. My background is definitely drive myself and to-do lists a mile long. And then there are many people that I think their brains work like ours, where it's like you're interested in a bunch of stuff all at once. And if you combine that with a type A drive yourself kind of personality, you can drive yourself right into the ground, which I did. It's, oh, I
Yeah.
gotta do this, I gotta it's like just that shift in perspective, I think gives you such freedom to just enjoy that you have a lot of interest. You don't have to, I went from driving myself into the ground, had illness. And then I was like, oh, then I smushed myself. I went the opposite way. Like I can't have a bunch of interests. And then when I started spiritually awakening, I sort of let go of that. And as I freed myself up to have the interest again, my energy sort of came back with that. Letting myself have those interests energized me. That's how I work. I need to have a bunch of interests. If I'm reading books, I need a bunch of different books so I can pick up whichever one I want at that time. And to release the guilt about that and just shift that
Yeah.
perspective really was a change in my health and energy.
I love, I wrote down play. You had already said toy box, but I think it has to do with looking at, all of these things can be considered play, even if they're not like, even doing
Yes.
like taxes, which is not my favorite thing, and keeping up with books from a business perspective throughout the year has been a huge challenge for me. But this year I have another friend who has had similar challenges, and I'm like, why don't we just get together like once a month at this location and we will go through it together. And now I'm looking forward to it. And it's only March, but at the same point, if we are able to sustain it, it's like, it makes it fun because we talk about life and other things and we laugh and yes, we get that stuff done too. But, but it's a lot more fun with a friend.
I love that because I do my own taxes and I haven't gotten to that point. My thing is just, I got it out of the way. It's like, if there's something I don't enjoy, I just go attack it so that I don't have to dread it anymore. That's my answer to it. But
I figure the more things I can
better.
find, the more ways I can find to make these things fun for me, the lighter, the more energy I'll have in all of those other things. It's easy to get stuck into that have to perspective for me. It's like, and especially when in relationship with other people who think differently about how things should work in terms of work, it's easy to feel pressure to do things a certain way or by a certain time. And I am finding more recently than not that I'm rising. I don't want to say rising above, but my perspective is evolving. And maybe that has to do with that whole, like we were talking about before with with channeling, there's a different way of learning, and I'm starting to recognize that this is that person's truth, but it isn't mine. And that's okay.
Yeah, and I think that's a beautiful thing too. I think that comes with channeling, that hey, they can have that truth and that can be totally true for them. And this can be totally true for me. And then also that, like, this is what I've come through, that where I was talking about holding our own inner voice the highest. And I think one of the reasons that comes through me in channeling, and I talk about that, is because that has been an issue in my life. I am the kind of person that if you want to argue with me, I'm going to listen to your side. You can say, hey, your forehead's purple, and I'll be like, oh really, is it? Let me go check. Like, I just take in everybody's truth as my truth. I have, and I think that's in one way a good way to be, so you're open. So I've always been very open. I'm not going to be like, well, because I think this, that's just the truth. And I like to stay open, but I also now run that past my inner voice, and I'll be like, maybe it is. Let me see. No, my forehead is not purple. Thank you. And I think the more you use that inner voice, the more it builds that muscle, and the more you don't have to worry about what other people think. And then you can, like you said, let them have their
love
truth.
the way you articulated that. And I think that, one word that came to mind to me was just intention. That it's okay. I thrive on that, being open and understanding and recognizing and appreciating multiple perspectives. And it's a big part of what I do for my work. Is I dig going into drama of some sort or another for other people, not my own as much maybe, but I don't really want to have a lot of drama, but I'm intrigued by the concept of drama and how it shows up in people's lives. And people get stuck because of it. And I have a lot of people in my family as well as friends and colleagues who do get stuck. And understanding the different truths involved and being open to those things really helps to recognize what the bigger root issues are. However, it's so easy when I've gone into companies to do this type of work to get caught up in that's where that intention, it's like, okay, I'm going in to be open to this stuff, but how did you word it? I loved it. Run it past your inner voice. Love that, because that's the big piece that I have really recognized after many experiences of suddenly getting, I am immersed in the energy and absorb it and become a part of it. And that's groupthink in a way. And it's like, okay, I have to step out of that. and recognize
Yeah.
that, okay, I'm not in that anymore. Now, what do I as Megan think? And that's a really, I love that strengthening the muscle thing
Yeah.
that you had said, because I think it's super important. And definitely a practice. Yeah.
Yes, it is a practice, and
Right.
it's not one and done. It's like, oh, okay, I get that. Like there's so many things we get on a cognitive level, but in my experience, at least, you have to keep learning them
Yep.
at a deeper
At
and
some
deeper
point,
level. And that's definitely one of
well,
them,
and at
what you
some point, I
practice
think it
with.
will
But
become, and maybe it has for you, but for me, it hasn't yet, a norm, that will be my new default. But that, time has not yet come for me. I have to be very intentional about it. And before going into those situations, I have to tell myself, okay, you're going in, you're allowing this, and then you come out and you do these things to reconnect with your inner voice. My inner voice is still active in those other times, um, but I almost want to be in the middle of those energies to really understand it. It's how I think, for me, it's one of the gifts of being an empath. It's being able to go in there and absorb that energy, as long as you don't let it manage you.
yeah.
Right?
Well, and it sounds like you're enjoying that, because that's probably part of what you came down here to gift to the world, that is really tied up with your work and entanglement and things like that. You go in, if you're gonna be,
Yeah.
I think you call it detangling, I'm not sure how you phrase it, but if you're gonna go, you got to go into
Yeah.
that entanglement to figure it out, right? So it's beautiful. Of course, you would enjoy that if that's what
Well,
you're
I
meant
enjoy
to
it
come down
now
here
that
and
I'm
do.
aware.
And it sounds like you're in that lesson of, yeah, yeah,
It used to
yeah.
be that,
Of course, it's a different thing going in, but
yeah,
now you're going in for your purpose, so
it's kind
you
of
can
that
get the joy out of
transformative
it. Yeah.
piece. And it's like that whole time when it was like, hey, I can actually decide when I'm going to do it and when I'm not. That really was an aha moment for me, because it used to be like, oh, why did I say yes to that thing that I didn't want to do when I was in that meeting with those people? I don't have any interest in doing that, but yet I got on board because everything was exciting and people were, yay. And I'm like, okay, sign me up. And then I left and I'm like, oh
Yeah.
man, there's no way.
Yeah.
I learned, yes, I have to have 24 hours before I make a decision, because I want to separate from that energy next time. Anyway, well,
That's a
it
great
was,
way to do it.
people were
Yeah.
kind of annoyed with me for a while because I'd back out of things I committed to. And it's like, okay, yeah, well, this is a problem for them, but it's also a problem for me. So let's try a different approach. And it's a lot more fun.
That's a great way to solve it. Yeah. Yeah. It sounds like you're just in the
Yeah.
energy of their group think and not even feeling your own
Yeah.
needs
Well,
in
a
the
part of it,
situation.
because, of course I'm connecting to that energy in a way. It wasn't like making me feel off. It was like, oh yeah, this is great. What a good idea.
Right. Right. Yeah. You're feeling it. Like, yeah, exactly. I would say I had a similar with mine. I feel like I really see, and this I believe is part of my gift, I
Mm,
really see patterns in people, and also, especially when people are in wounding and hurt, they
mm,
might be lashing out and looking like a total jerk. And I've never really seen people as jerks. I see right beneath it, right to the, oh, well, here's where
mhm.
they're wounded and here's where they need help and kind of thing. And now that's a beautiful thing. If I'm in readings or coaching people, things like that, that works really well. So it's coming into play where that's probably part of what I came to gift in the world. But in the beginning, I'd be in relationships and somebody's kind of being a jerk to me. And I'm just seeing, oh, you're so
Mm.
wounded. And the empath is me is like, well, let me help your wounding. Totally putting this fact aside that, hey, you're kind of wounding me here. And I would end up putting myself aside, just like, you're saying, yourself is not first in that situation. So many of us light workers, I think you talked before about the word selfish should be
Yeah,
not a negative word. And especially when you're talking to a whole group of light workers with big old hearts that
exactly.
just want to give, give, give. It's like we have to
Yep.
remember to be selfish. So yeah, I think it evolves into your purpose as you kind of grow and you evolve into what we came
Totally.
down here to do.
Yes. There was something you said now, I think.
Mhm.
Oh, just with the thing about seeing people when they're wounded, I'm curious, do you happen to see them at a different age where the wounding may have happened?
Um, And when I say see, I think it's more realize. I'm not
Mm,
necessarily visualizing like a smaller version of their self, but it's almost like I can see right into their soul. And it's like they might be saying blah, blah, blah. And I never understood I've been this way since I was young. I never understood why other people around me were reacting in a normal human manner of like, oh, they're being a jerk, get away from me. Well, can't you see? They're just being a jerk because they have mother issues around this, and this triggered that issue of back then. And so it's sort of like I could
Yeah.
kind of see into that, even if I didn't know the whole story. I didn't know I was intuitive or anything back then, but it's just really, by seeing into it, it's sort of, I guess
Yeah.
maybe that claircognizance, which seems to be one of my stronger skills, just kicking in of, hey, here's where the issues are lying, and here's what needs to be healed. I think that's the important part. Here is what needs
Yeah.
to be healed. It's not about this is your issue or this is where the wounding is, which it is, and it's not about, hey, this person's being a jerk and they're lashing out. That's just really, like you were talking about the onion, that's the surface of it. And so many humans are just reacting on it. Well, I'm lashing out and you're lashing out, and they're both just lashing out because it's wounding under here. And if we can all just deal with this wounding and with compassion and love, then things would be a lot easier. And I think part of my problem when I was younger is I'm coming from this place, but not many other people were coming from that place, and I'm not understanding
how that will.
You assume people think like you do. So for a long time when I was younger, of course, I'm assuming everybody's thinking and acting from this level, and you kind of get screwed over sometimes when you do that. And luckily, I had a friend in college who was love her to death, but she was a very good manipulator, and she was a great benefit in my life because she would think the way they thought, so she could really see through people's manipulations, and being around her and seeing that really helped me see that as well. So I could kind of see both sides. I have the compassion for their wounding, but I can see all the games
that's super interesting.
Versus before I was just blind to
because
the
you went in, you know, with this positive intention and belief that the manipulation aspect didn't maybe make sense to you until you met this person, or maybe it did, but it's really.
And I wouldn't even see it existing. I didn't even know it existed because it just wasn't in me. And it's so hard to relate to something that's not in you. I think I just came into the world like, hey, it's love and light, and everybody's love and light. And if you're acting that way, it must be love and light. That must be your like motivation right under. And I do believe everybody is love and light way underneath. But I would say around college is when I met her, and I'd say that's where it started. I started getting more aware of things. And of course, some of those awarenesses came through hurts and things like that. But they're all good lessons. Now I feel like it's much more balanced than it used to be. Now it serves me well in what I'm doing, which I feel like I'm opening up to my true soul's purpose here on earth now.
I asked that question about seeing other people where the wounding occurred, because occasionally that happens with me. And my husband's one example, but he's not the only one. In fact, he wasn't the first one I had noticed this in. But he's a good example because he kind of reminded me of the movie Big, where Tom Hanks is like an adult, but then he does this kind of Zoltar fortune teller machine. And I do too. And so do you remember when he shrank and then he's wearing that big suit? That is kind of how it is for me with with men, maybe. My husband never wears a suit, so it didn't look that way with him, but it was kind of that whole, he's behaving in a certain way and he's saying certain things and I'm observing, and all of a sudden I see this kid at around 8 years old, you know, and I'm just like, well, that is super interesting. But I've seen it with other people, certain behaviors and things, and I'm like, well, that is, and it's not always the same age. It's like, wow, what is that? So I'm like, what happened when you were 8? And he can't answer that question, but I'm convinced because it comes up again and again that, you know, and maybe it isn't necessary to know that, but I'm like, wow, that is just really, and it's a vision in real time with my eyes open. So it's like, okay.
So clairvoyance, but not even in your mind's eye, in your
it's more eyes. In my mind's eye, but yes.
But with your eyes open.
I'm getting those more and more visions with my eyes open, but it's almost like a little movie running in the background that shows me a little something and a snippet, which is like, at first it kind of freaked me out. And actually it did start, I really noticed it with the people changing you know, into this child while they're still there talking in front of me. It's like a silhouette, but it's not with my eyes, so I don't know how to explain it. It's almost like this really light transparency over it.
That makes sense, though. It's clairvoyantly, in your mind's eye, but you can do it when your eyes are open. Like, of course, why can't we? If we can do it when our eyes are closed? It just takes to me, it just takes a greater concentration when your eyes are open. I'll get some of that when I'm on my lives more than any other place
Yeah.
because I'm really in that zone. But if I'm out just in the world, I think the level of concentration it takes I'm not quite there out in the world, but I'm there in my life. So I think I know what you're talking about. But I would say that's such a beautiful thing and such a, like, I've never ever heard anybody describe that. I'm sure there's probably people who have that experience, but I've not come across anybody. And I would say, you're not asking me, but
Yeah.
delve into that because that's probably part of what you're here to give the world too,
Probably.
obviously. You know, that's
I
just beautiful,
it
really
only
cool. Probably
I
will come into
imagine it
your work
will,
at some point.
especially the business, the non-light worker side of my business that's with companies and CEOs. I totally expect that to, because this didn't happen when I worked in a company before. So going in this way as like a consultant and seeing all these people at play, I'm probably going to see like a big playground of kids, you know.
Yeah. 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 Because I mean, that's when most people get really deep rooted wounding, that things that need to be healed, things like that. The deep rooted stuff is generally when you are a kid, I think, because we're more open and vulnerable and haven't built so many
Yeah.
shells up yet. And
Yeah. Well,
so that
I'll
would
report
make
back
sense.
when I see it. But
The problem is too, though, that so many of them, like you said with your husband, like he can't tell me, so many people are just at a
they're not ready to
consciousness
hear
that
it.
they're somehow just really disconnected from that. And yeah, and some people aren't ready to. Yeah, of course. You
Well,
don't
and
want to give
certainly I'm
people
not going
stuff
to
they're
write
not
a
ready
report
for.
that says, and this person was wounded when they were 3. And, you know, I mean, I could try it, but, you know.
It would help if he goes talks to his mom about the issue when he was 3.
Oh my gosh.
Call your mother.
You know, it would be fun to incorporate those things, but I don't think they're ready for it yet.
No, probably not. Maybe give it another
There you
decade. The
go.
corporate world
Yep.
might be ready for
Story
that,
of
but
my
no.
life.
Yeah.
Well, so what else is going on for you? What else are you exploring? And I mean, like there's room for much else. You're really actively learning, which I love. And I know as we have that interest together.
Yeah. A few things actually that sparked me when you were we were talking about the energy and things like that. I'm reading a few different books. One of which, the one I'm reading on Kindle, it's called Music Physicians for Times to Come by Don Campbell. Music Physicians for Time to Come by Don Campbell. And I'm reading that because I seem to be into sound and vibration right now. At the beginning of all this awakening, I kept getting readings like, your work is in sound and vibration, and I never understood it. And now it's starting to coalesce where I'm starting to understand that with the Ashana mentorship and with learning about sound healing and things like that. So this book, one of the aha moments, I'm just kind of in the beginning of it, but one of the aha moments for me was it talking about this group of monks who do the Gregorian chants and how they would chant for hours on end. They have all kinds of energy and they still do chores. I think they said they sleep like 4 hours a night and they're still so they're chanting all this time. They have productivity and they're sleeping like 4 hours a night and not even eating that much. I believe they were eating lighter, vegetarian and like high vibration, what we call high vibration foods. And someone came in, I'll forget some of the details because my mind learns in paraphrasing, but someone came in, a new leader came into these monks and thought, gosh, they're so productive here. They get a lot done, but they're chanting all day long. If we cut down their chanting time, they can get even more done. Just like that Western corporate, like, let's squeeze everything out of them. So they changed the chanting. I think there was still some incorporated, but way less. Instead of hours a day, maybe you got to chant for an hour in the morning or half hour in the morning. I can't remember the specifics, but reduced way, way down. And what happened is the productivity didn't go up. The monks started getting sick. And he literally, I believe he called it a cell, which was weird, but I'll call it a room. Like he would go in their rooms. He would see them this guy that wrote this was a physician as well as a sound healer. So he had two sides to him. And he went in there, he was called in there to help the monks because they were sick. And he said, I would see them slumped in their rooms. They were literally slumped, like their postures like this. They weren't healthy. I believe there was something about how they started eating, they were craving less vegetarian fare and things like that. And then of course, because they're getting sick, which they hadn't really gotten sick before, they're not really as productive and they weren't happy. Before they were just happy, productive beings. And when he went in, he reincorporated chanting at a I guess maybe they were at a point of desperation enough that they let him. And when he reincorporated the chanting, they regained their health, regained their energy, everything else. And this, what I loved is this man said, singing is our natural birthright, which is like, that's one of the things I say about channeling that I've gotten through. And it's like, I
Yeah.
love that singing is our natural birthright. I love that because the first thing I ever wanted to be when I was little was a singer. I never wanted to be famous. It wasn't about that. People ask me why. I was like, I don't know. I just want to sing and share that with people. I want to sing this beautiful thing and share it with people. And I've never understood why, because frankly, I don't sing very well, in my opinion. But he said so many of us, our voice, our literal voice gets smushed when we're smaller because we sing and we get embarrassed, or somebody said, oh no, you're not good. This gentleman who wrote it even had, he was in a choir when he was little and he supposedly wasn't good. And for the Christmas choir, the choir leader said, you stand in the back, don't sing, just mouth watermelon the whole time. For a whole 2 hours, you stand there and mouth
Watermelon. That's an
watermelon. As a
well,
kid, I don't know. Yeah, it was interesting to me. Watermelon. I guess it looks like
funny.
singing. And so he was kind of smushed.
That happened with my husband.
And it really rang
The
true.
same story.
Really?
They told him it would be best if he wasn't in choir. I know. I got real.
Oh, well, they let him be in it because they needed the spot. They needed to fill the spot. So this is almost even worse. They let him be in it and stand at the Christmas choir for 2 hours, mouthing watermelon, not sing. Yeah. It's like how psychological. I believe he called it a psychological trauma. Which I agree with. And just like the bowls, it was really interesting. Ashana, when we were having that session this past Wednesday, that was so enlightening for me. She took me through a meditation, and I was like, half of it, I'm like, I know how to meditate. Why is she taking my time going through a meditation? But I trust her, so I'm going with it. But that egoic mind is like, I know how to meditate. Come on, don't teach me how to meditate. But she took me to this meditation and said, okay, pick up your I'm forgetting the word.
What, the mallet? You know? Is it a mallet? I don't know what you call it. Is it okay?
The word, the mallet. Thank you. Yeah, mallet. Mallet. Yeah, thank you. And she's like, and play. And so for a little while, it was just beauteous sound coming out, and then the sound went a little loud, and I remember the thought, ooh, wait, that's loud, let me back off. And then at the end, she was telling me something, and my mind engaged, and she's like, I can tell. She could tell from the music when my mind disengaged. And I thought, I even told her, she's like, I'm going to steal this line. I was like, oh my God, what a great biofeedback device for like meditation, because you can hear it in the music. And I kind of heard too, the music will change when your mind goes cognitive. When you're playing the bowl, the music actually changed. And the one thing, when I was really getting in a trance state and into channeling and things like that, I would play with my bowls sometimes and just tone with them. And if I was really in that state, it's like, boy, I could swear my voice sounded almost not, I don't think it'll ever sound as good as the Shauna's, but in my head, it was sounding really, really good. But as soon as I would think about it, then I'd be like, oh. And I realized, which is the same with channeling, you have to step aside. So I think I realized if I'm ever going to tone or anything, it's got to be in that state. But I think when he's speaking of us, I think he says everybody can sing. And I love that because I want to sing, but I feel like I can't. And I feel like as long as we get in that really relaxed receivership state, we can sing and we'll connect to our true voice, and it will come out in a beautiful way. And a great biofeedback device as well, because for me, because I'm not a good singer, I'm not a trained singer. So when I'm in that state, I can sing beautifully. And as soon as my brain goes, then I think it's a self-doubt or something coming in and changes it. So I just found that whole thing fascinating about sound healing, about singing be our natural birthright.
I love that. I mean, I'm clairaudient as well, and I'm very interested in vibrational and frequency aspects of our environment, of how we relate to each other in those frequencies, and really trying to notice them, like different vibrations in people. I do it more intuitively. I want to bring that more to the surface where I am conscious of those differences. And that's an interesting experience for me who really doesn't have that kind of training. But one thing around singing that I've noticed personally is I agree. And I love that singing is a national birthright. I got really upset when I heard my husband's story because I'm like, what kind of teacher does that? Of course, now he grew up in the
Yeah, to a
60s in Britain.
kid. I
So,
mean,
I mean, not that
gosh,
that's a bad
yeah.
thing, but I do think that from an educational standpoint,
Yeah,
very, yes,
just to
very
cover
box
up.
oriented for the kids, right? I mean, the wall came out of that experience, right? So, um,
Yeah.
he, so what I started to do, I went through choir all through school, but I was never the person picked for a solo. I wasn't picked for those extra groups that they had that performed. I mean, I performed a little bit, but always in a safer group, let's say. But I the I'd become self-conscious of my own singing because a part of me is like, well, nobody ever really wants to hear me do a solo, and it had something to do with that, my own self-consciousness. But when driving in the car, I noticed I wasn't really allowing myself to sing if my family was there with me. I'd sing it really lightly, like, and nobody could hear it. And now I don't care, and I'm singing full voice, and my family has learned to accept that. I don't know that anybody ever compliments my singing, but I don't care. And I want it to be encouraged so my daughter can sing because she sings, but she's never really taken any formal courses or or lessons or anything like that. But I noticed, started to get self-conscious, and it's like, no, don't get self-conscious, just sing. That's we sh it it's
That's
it's
beautiful.
fun if you're singing to music that you relate to, and to me that is a vibrational lifting
Yeah.
experience, and we need more of that in our lives and in the world. So everyone should sing. We should have a national singing day.
Absolutely. And even beyond, I love that. I love that. And even beyond, like we need more of that because it's uplifting and joyous, which is uplifting and joyous is healing for us. But this guy, and I'll as I read more, I'm sure I'll understand more. He just really is talking
Yeah.
about how healing it is. So whether you sing good or not, as long as you're singing happily, it's actually so
Oh,
healing. And I haven't gotten into all the effects that I could list them yet. I haven't gotten there, but it's just he's talking about how healing it is for your body. Um, that even more than listening to the music. Of course, when we're listening to music, it's best vibrationally if we can listen live. If not, listen electronically, still good. But even better than that is creating that own
yes.
vibration in your body. And I really like reading people like that. I've been whoever, and I guess because that's maybe how I work, where science and spirituality meet. I'm becoming really, really
Mm,
fascinated with it this time. And probably because I come from such a science background that now I'm so into spirituality. And I love
yeah.
where they meet and don't contradict or discount each other. I think both are valid. And it's like when they meet together, we're observing, but we're observing from the point of, yes, there is consciousness, and yes, there is the universal field. And if science accepts that and comes together, Dr. Teresa Bullard on Gaia has some series that she's a PhD in physics, but spirituality, and she has just a great way of explaining things at such a rudimentary level anybody can understand them. She's such a great teacher of where science and
I love that
spirituality meet.
intersection too. I love the
I
both
love
and
that. And
aspects of it because for so long they've been separate. It's like this or that, and it doesn't have to
yeah,
be that way. I'm very much an
yeah.
and person, a gray area person, and the fact that these two things, I
Mhm.
believe now, and I think you had referenced this earlier, that they're coming together in ways that are really positive, and that there is more allowance.
Yeah. And when they come
Yes,
together, the
yes,
growing,
definitely.
yeah, the growing is going to be exponential when they really start working together
Oh, no,
more.
that's
And
okay.
sorry, I didn't mean
So we
to.
have 5 minutes, 4 minutes left, but I did want to just I met with a friend earlier, a couple of weeks ago, and she had said that she had a gathering where everybody, as an icebreaker, was asked to name their stage song. So like a song that they would play if they were to walk on stage for a keynote speech or something like that. My friend had chosen Happier by, out of the Despicable Me series. And, and then they created a playlist of everybody's stage song. And anytime they'd have a meeting, this was a work gathering, they would play everyone's stage song. And I've been thinking about that ever since, because for me, it would be a stage song that best represents me and my personality, something that I would find lifting. If anybody has ever watched The Holiday, they did a stage song for Eli Wallach's character, and it was so perfect for that character. And it's like, hey, what would this stage song be? And personally, I like incorporating the singing aspect of that. So when my friend said happy, you know, I sing to that song because it's fun. And so I'm just throwing it out there as a, what would your stage song be? Because I take a long time to decide on those things. It wouldn't be an easy, quick one, but unless you already know yours.
Well, what's coming to me, I was thinking about it as you're saying it, and there's two songs that come to mind, which might make sense because I feel like I'm so split down the middle as far as like left brain, right brain, but and they're very different. One would be, and there's no words in it whatsoever, but Yo-Yo Ma is just so high vibration to me when I listen to it, especially just the solo cello playing. And there's one, I'd have to look it up, but one of, I think it's Bach that he's playing or something like that, a piece that is even above all his others, I just resonate with. And if I ever just need to, it just gets me right into that centered, blissful place just by hearing it. So oddly, that would be one. And I know you said one, but I'm going to pick two because I can. And the other one you're going to totally laugh at, but it's Knee Deep by Jimmy Buffett. And if you hear it, it's very upbeat, but he talks about he's knee deep in the water somewhere without any cares. Only cares is the tide going to reach his chair. And there's one that he says the ocean is his only medication, wishing his condition will never change. And then he says sort of like something that I forget the exact words, but basically saying, hey, surrender. And one that he's like, I'm lost in the tropics somewhere is the gist of it. And he's like, hey, if you surrender, kind of, maybe someday you'll be as lost as me. And I love that. And nobody thinks of Jimmy Buffett as profound, and he is not in many of his songs, like Margaritaville. Not so
That's a different kind of condition.
But this one to me is very, yeah. This one to me is actually very profound, and it's one of his later ones. So maybe he's, evolving into that. But because I relate to that bliss of being, if I can get to that place where I'm at the ocean, I do need the ocean. Swimming is medication for me, and I really listened to the song at a time where it felt like my life blew up, but I found the beauty of just being surrendering and being lost, just like he was talking about, and how beautiful it was. Yeah. When all this stuff blows up out of your life, you see what's left, and then that's when my awakening happened. And it was just,
well, I think it's wonderful, and
a lot to get out of a Jimmy Buffett song. But
I think you should try a mashup of those two songs, just to see what happens. Since this is a mashup, so that'd be really fun. It is now time to end the show. I apologize. I have to do good.
That actually, I
want
could
you
see,
to do it.
yeah.
And, if you do it, share. So I want to thank you so much, Lisa, for coming back on the show. It's always such a pleasure to talk with you. You and I need to talk more often for sure. We're already on the same path. I mean, maybe we were just doing it intuitively anyway. But I thank you very much for being here. And thank you to all of the viewers in the live as well as the replay for being here.
Thank you so much, and happy spring break.
Have fun, everybody.